Welcome to Michigan's WW1 Centennial News Report for June 2017. Over there, 1918-1978, an interview with Dr. Ed Rennell. Dr. Rennell is responsible for the production of the documentary Over There, 1918-1978, which follows the Doughboys from Sault Ste. Marie to France, 60 years after the end of the Great War. The State Report, SB 248, the bill that will create a WW1 Centennial Commission for Michigan, is currently in the Assembly in the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee, headed by Representative Jason Wentworth, which is supposed to bring up the bill sometime in early June 2017. To stay informed and up to date on Michigan's WW1 Centennial, please visit our webpage, Michigan's WW1 Centennial. It features articles, videos, places, and also current events. If your organization is planning a WW1 event, please email the information to the email address on the webpage. One century ago, June 1917. On June 1st, 1917, Hank Gowdy from the Boston Braves was the first Major League Baseball player to enlist in the U.S. Army. He was with the 166th Infantry, part of the Ohio National Guard, and saw some of the worst trench fighting during the war. On June 4th, 1917, General Brusilov was appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Army. On June 5, 1917, all men between 21 and 31 years of age were required to register for the draft. This would be the first of 3 registrations. June 7, 1917, Melvin Jones and a number of other businessmen from Chicago formed the Lions Club International, now the largest service organization in the world. Also on June 7th, on the Western Front, the British Army detonates mines underneath the German-held Messines Ridge in the Ypres area. At 3:10 a.m. the mines went off, killing over 10,000 German soldiers. June 12, 1917, the Secret Service extends protection for the President to his family. June 13, 1917, the deadliest German air raid on London occurred. It was carried out by Gotha G bombers and resulted in 162 deaths, including 46 children, and 432 injuries. June 14, 1917, General Pershing and his headquarters staff arrive in Paris. June 15, 1917, in order to calm troubled relations with Ireland, the British grant amnesty to the prisoners taken during the Easter Uprising of 1916. June 17, 1917, Portuguese troops see action for the first time in France. On June 19, 1917, the British royal family, which has had strong ties to Germany since George I, renounces German names and titles and adopts the name of Windsor. Also on June 19th, Canadian General Arthur Currie is appointed the commander of the Canadian Expeditionary Force in France. June 21st, 1917, mutiny breaks out in the Russian Black Sea Fleet at Sevastopol. On June 26, 1917, part of the 1st Division of the American Expeditionary Force arrived in France. A year later, there would be over 1 million soldiers, but in June 1917, there was just a mere 14,000. In 1978 and 1979, Dr. Rennell filmed and edited the documentary Over There, 1918-1978, the story of the Sault Ste. Marie Doughboys Drum and Bugle Corps, which traveled from Sault Ste. Marie to France 60 years after the end of World War I. Dr. Rennell's documentary is now available on YouTube on the Michigan WW1 Centennial channel and also on Michigan's WW1 Centennial website at ww1cc.org/Michigan under videos.
My name is Dr. Ed Rennell. I'm a retired oral surgeon. I'm a graduate of the University of Michigan, class of 1960. Back when this trip to England and France was set up for the World War I Drum and Bugle Corps. Of course, I was only 42 years old at the time. I'm a veteran of the U.S. Army, and coincidentally I did my active duty in the southwest of France during the time of 1961 to 1963. So this trip, in a way, was somewhat of a homecoming for me. I had been there some 15 years or so previously. People don't realize that I'm now of the age that they were when they went on the trip. In about 6 weeks, I'll be 81, and when the veterans, the Doughboys, went on the trip, their ages ranged from 79 to 91. Now, people ask me how I became interested or involved in the trip. And I just happened to be reading the Detroit Free Press one day. I ran across this article about the Doughboys from Sault Ste. Marie were going to be returning to England and France to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the end of World War I. And immediately that piqued my interest, and especially the statement that said we're encouraging anyone who is interested to join us on the trip and pay their own way back over there, and that's exactly what I did. As time went along, I got into some conversations with Bill Raby, the publicist from Lake Superior State College at the time. It since has become a university. And I indicated I was going to shoot a Super 8mm movie of the trip. I figured this is something that should be preserved on film, and he asked if I could do it in 16mm, which would be a much nicer format, and that's how I became involved. Along on the trip with us was Eric Sharpe, a young writer with the Detroit Free Press. He since has become the outdoor writer of the Free Press and then retired a few years ago. But since Eric went with us on the trip, we enlisted him to write the script for the movie. And along with Bill Raby and myself, that's how the script evolved. Now, putting a movie like this together requires a lot of expertise that I did not have. And so I enlisted the help of a gentleman named Bill Miller, who was a film editor out at Channel 7 in Detroit. And I spent many hours out at Channel 7, after hours, of course, working on the editing of the film. The film was narrated by Hal Youngblood, who was the producer for J.P. McCarthy of WJR Radio. Now, J.P. was supposed to be the narrator, and things just didn't work out, and Hal agreed to do it. The film was shot, of course, in 1978, and took the better part of a year to put everything together before it was finally ready to be shown. And so Bill Raby arranged for the premiere to be at none other than the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island, and that was in October of 1979. We had some other showings the next evening over at the Iroquois Hotel, and then that was a Friday and Saturday. On Sunday we returned up to Sault Ste. Marie, Lake Superior State College, and we had the Sault Ste. Marie premiere at the college that Sunday evening. Since then, the film has been shown to various American Legion, VFW halls, private showings. This would be back in the 1980s, and I think since that time I don't think it's had much exposure. Final day, which would be November 12th, one day after Armistice Day, and that day was set aside to visit the battlefields of World War I. And fortunately, we were accompanied on that trip, and I've long since forgotten his name, but he was a historian, and he rode on the bus with us, and he, as we passed through different areas, across the Marne, went to Meuse, Belleauwood, places like that, he gave us a history, what battles were going on at the time, what the losses were. We even had lunch right in the middle of Belleauwood, right near the remains of an old rusty cannon. And one of the highlights, which we had not anticipated, was when one of the drummers, Jack Riggle, was able to find the grave of his brother who had been killed in 1918, and he was buried in Wazane Cemetery, and a little impromptu ceremony was held at that time as Jack stood by the graveside and saluted his brother. That had to be one of the most moving parts of the trip. And as we walked around the cemetery, we could see other famous people that were buried there. Most notably was Joyce Kilmer, the poet, who was best known for the poem Trees. It's amazing how sometimes little things happen that you think nothing of, but wonderful things can come from it. And one of those things was one of the drum corps members, Sammy Mirabella, and Sammy had a habit of having his Kellogg's cereal, cornflakes, and a bottle of beer for breakfast every day, and he said he would not go on the trip unless he could get his Kellogg's. That led to the Kellogg Company in London setting up a champagne breakfast on board the HMS Belfast, which is moored in the Thames River right near the Tower Bridge, and along with a number of the British veterans from World War I, a wonderful champagne breakfast just came out of Sammy's little habit. I remember some of the several quotes from a couple of the veterans. One was, I can't remember his name, who made the quote, but he said, "It was a wonderful experience. I wouldn't give it for $1 million, but I wouldn't wish anyone would ever have to go through it again." And another quote I do recall is Asa Brabant. He was discussing how his regiment company was lined up to meet the King and Queen of Belgium, and he described how they walked through the ranks. But then he said also the little princess was with them, and he described her as being 4 feet tall and about 4 feet wide. And I thought that was a little humor there. Our bus driver on this trip was a young Scot named Brian King. He accompanied us both in England and in France. And he turned out to be a remarkable young man. And near the end of the trip, he presented the drum corps with a poem that he had written in their honor. And it's called "The Years Pass, Comrades Remain." Old years have come, new years have gone, but we still remember World War I. You came to play, to drink and be fed, but mostly to remember your friends who are dead. They died in foreign lands afar. That brings us back to where we are. You guys are proud, rightly to be, just a few of the vets from Sault Ste. Marie. Heroes come and heroes go. Where their courage comes from, we'll never know. One group of such men, you'll agree, I am sure, is the World War I Drum and Bugle Corps. I'll live my life hoping and praying to be like one of the vets from Sault Ste. Marie.
Folks are singing around the tree, singing around the tree. Everyone you meet, what is the latest melody that causes young idea? From a cheeky to cheek with and I'll whisper in your ear. Mademoiselle from Armentières, hallelujah. Mademoiselle from Armentières, same to you. Sing it with all your heart and soul and see everyone right up the pole. Mademoiselle from Armentières. Standing across from Riggle town, he put on his kilts one day. Down with a blinding sleigh, merry and bright and gay. Out of the prom he strolled along, the wind was rather high. Who was the girl that turned her head but only shut one eye? Why, Mademoiselle from Armentières, hallelujah. Mademoiselle from Armentières, same to you. Sing it with all your heart and soul and see everyone right up to the pole. Mademoiselle from Armentières. Company Sergeant Major Brown was taken to all the job. All the boys of the squad knew that old Brown was on. Even the girls who had no chance to shine.